I never would have thought that the most ordinary day of my life would turn into the day I tore apart my 10-year marriage, all because of 2 talking parrots. If you're watching this video, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because the story of how 2 simple pet birds exposed my husband's cynical plan is proof that sometimes the truth surfaces from the most unexpected voices. I want to tell you exactly what Charlie and Lola, my beloved parrots, repeated to me, and why I immediately understood that those words were the key to my freedom. Let me take you back to how it all started. For 10 years, I believed I was living an American fairy tale. My name is Samantha. I worked as a public relations manager for one of the most innovative tech companies here in Seattle. Think Amazon, but smaller and more exclusive. At 38, I had everything. A career that my colleagues envied, a beautiful loft in the Capitol Hill neighborhood with a view of Puget Sound, and what I thought was a dream marriage. My husband, Marcus Thompson, was one of those men who, when they entered a room, all conversations stopped. 6'5", perfectly styled salt and pepper hair, always dressed like he just stepped out of the pages of GQ. He was a luxury real estate consultant, specializing in million-dollar properties, waterfront villas, downtown Seattle penthouses, ranches in the Cascade Mountains. Our love story had begun like a romantic movie. We met at a charity party at the Four Seasons. I was managing the event for my company. He was there as a potential buyer of a property we were auctioning for charity. He had approached me with that magnetic confidence of his and said, "I bet you're the brain behind all this perfection." 2 years of fairy tale courtship, then a dream wedding in Napa Valley. 350 guests, a $600,000 budget, and a honeymoon in the Maldives that made all my friends on Instagram envious. But there was one detail that made our life together unique: the parrots, Charlie and Lola. I had adopted them 3 years before meeting Marcus, when I still lived in my first apartment in Fremont. Charlie was a male African gray parrot, with that elegant gray and red tail that looked like a small fire. Lola was his companion, slightly smaller but incredibly more talkative. These birds weren't simple pets. African gray parrots have the intelligence of a 5-year-old child and the memory of an elephant. Charlie had learned to perfectly imitate the sound of my alarm clock, so much so that I often woke up thinking it was the phone ringing. Lola, on the other hand, had developed a passion for imitating my work phone conversations. Often, when I was on the phone with important clients, I'd hear her repeat phrases like "absolutely fantastic" or "let's proceed with implementation" with my exact intonation. Marcus, when we got engaged, had found the parrots interesting but noisy. He didn't hate them, but it was clear they weren't his type of company. "They're too intelligent," he often said. "They make me feel like they're judging me." Now I understand that phrase was more prophetic than I thought. When we moved in together to the Capitol Hill loft, I insisted that Charlie and Lola have their large aviary in the main living room, with a view of the city. Marcus had agreed, but established a rule. In the evening, when I come home from work, I'd like some quiet. Can you cover the cage? It was a reasonable request, I thought. Marcus worked hard, traveled often, deserved peace when he came home. The first signs that something was changing began about 8 months ago. Marcus had always traveled for work. It was the nature of his business. The luxury real estate market on the West Coast required physical presence, face-to-face meetings with clients who spent 8-figure sums on a property. But the frequency of trips had increased dramatically. Before, he left maybe twice a month. Now he was away almost every week. "The market is exploding," he explained while packing his suitcase with that military precision of his. "I have clients in Portland who want to invest $30 million in commercial properties. Others in Vancouver who are looking for seaside villas. And then there's this group of investors from San Francisco who want to create a portfolio of luxury properties throughout the Pacific Northwest." His explanations were always detailed, always credible. Marcus had the gift of making any real estate topic interesting. He told me about penthouses with rooftop pools, villas with private helipads, Investments that would change the urban landscape of entire cities. And I believed him. Why should I have doubted? Our bank account was flourishing. Marcus always returned with expensive gifts. A Hermes bag from a trip to Portland. A Cartier bracelet from Vancouver. A $2,000 bottle of wine from Napa Valley, where he had closed an incredible deal. But Charlie and Lola had started behaving strangely during his absences. Normally, when Marcus was away, the Parrots were more relaxed. They could chat freely without his presence. That put them slightly on edge. But now, when Marcus left, they became agitated. Charlie started walking nervously on his perch. Lola made sounds I had never heard before. And then there were the whispers. At first, I thought they were just the usual sounds they imitated from television or my work calls. But these whispers were different. They were intimate, almost secretive. I heard them say fragments like, "Yes, love," with a voice that sounded like Marcus's, but softer, more tender than he normally spoke with me. Or, "Soon, soon," with an urgency I didn't understand. Once, while I was working from my home office, I heard Lola repeat, "Beautiful, you're beautiful," with a male voice I recognized as Marcus's, but with an inflection he hadn't used with me in recent years. I started taking mental notes. When exactly did the Parrots say these phrases? Always when Marcus was traveling. Never when he was home. And the strangest thing, when Marcus returned from his trips and heard the Parrots repeat these fragments, he became visibly nervous. "These birds are getting too noisy," he started saying. "Maybe we should think about moving them to another room." But I resisted. Charlie and Lola had been with me before Marcus, and they would stay with me. They were my family. What I didn't know was that they were becoming my personal detectives. The moment that changed everything came on a Thursday afternoon in November. It was raining, that typical Seattle rain that seems never to end, and I was working from my home office on a campaign for launching a new tech product. Marcus had left Tuesday morning for what he had described as the most important trip of my career. A group of international investors in Portland who wanted to buy an entire city block to build a luxury complex. I had headphones on, focused on a PowerPoint presentation, when I heard a sound that froze my blood. Charlie, with Marcus's unmistakable voice, that deep, confident voice I knew so well, said clearly, "Come, love, my wife isn't here." I took off my headphones so fast they fell to the floor. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. Then, as if programmed, Lola added with a female voice that definitely wasn't mine, "How I've missed you, darling." And then, as if that wasn't enough, Charlie repeated again, "Come, love, my wife isn't here." The phrase was perfect, complete, not a random fragment or a coincidence. It was a complete sentence, pronounced with the exact intonation Marcus used when he was excited or affectionate. But I was the wife who wasn't there, and the woman who had said, "How I've missed you," certainly wasn't me. I felt the world collapse under my feet. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating so hard I thought the Parrots could hear it. I sat on the couch, staring at Charlie and Lola, who were looking at me with those intelligent eyes, as if they knew exactly what they had just revealed. African gray parrots learn through repetition. They don't invent phrases out of thin air. If Charlie was repeating, "Come, love, my wife isn't here," with Marcus's voice, it meant Marcus had said that phrase enough times for it to be memorized. And if Lola was responding with, "How I've missed you, darling," with an unknown female voice, it meant there was another woman, in my loft, in my sacred space. The first reaction was pure anger. I wanted to call Marcus immediately, scream, demand explanations. But then, my professional experience in public relations took over. In PR, the first rule is, never react impulsively. Gather information, verify facts, then act strategically. I decided to do exactly that. I took my phone and started recording the Parrots. I wanted to have audio evidence of what they were saying. For the next 3 days, every time Charlie and Lola repeated conversation fragments, I was there with my phone ready. I collected an entire archive of feathered evidence. Marcus saying, "You're so beautiful when you do that." A female voice responding, "Only for you." "Baby," Marcus whispering, "the next trip will be longer, I promise." And the same female voice saying, "I can't wait." But I needed more than parrot recordings. I needed concrete evidence. The opportunity came the following Saturday. Marcus had returned from his Portland trip Friday evening, tired and distant as always after business trips. Saturday morning, while he was showering, I noticed he had left his secondary laptop on the kitchen table, the one he rarely used, mainly for backups and less important work. Marcus had always been protective of his electronic devices. Confidential client information? He always said, "I can't risk privacy violations." But that morning, perhaps due to fatigue or overconfidence, he had left the laptop open and unlocked. My conscience struggled for about 10 seconds. Then, Charlie's voice repeating, "My wife isn't here," won over every moral scruple. What I found on that laptop exceeded every worst imagination I had. The Portland Clients folder didn't contain real estate information. It contained hundreds of photos of a blonde woman, probably in her 30s, in increasingly intimate poses. Some photos were clearly taken in my loft. I recognized the living room couch, the view from the bedroom window, even the kitchen where I prepared breakfast every morning. The name of the next folder made me nauseous. My real life. Inside, I found detailed planning that had been going on for almost a year. Marcus wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to leave the marriage, but not before implementing an elaborate plan to maximize his gains from the separation. I found emails with his divorce attorney, an attorney he had hired 8 months earlier, long before I suspected anything, where they discussed strategies to minimize financial losses and maximize rights to common assets. But the most shocking part was his strategy to steal my career. Marcus had created a detailed document titled Operation Fresh Start, where he listed all my most important professional contacts, the CEOs of tech companies I worked with, the influencers I managed, even the journalists with whom I had built relationships over the years. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity. Marcus would use his charm and his position as husband of Seattle's PR queen to convince my clients to follow him in his new entrepreneurial adventure. Not real estate, but a new communication and marketing agency he would launch together with his mistress. The blonde woman in the photos was named Isabella Rivera, and she wasn't a simple affair. She was a marketing strategist with an MBA from Stanford, who had worked for some of the biggest agencies in San Francisco before moving to Seattle for love, as she had written in one of the emails to Marcus. Together, they had planned to steal not only my husband, but the entire career I had built in 15 years of work. Digging deeper into the emails between Marcus and Isabella, I discovered that she was the strategic brain behind the entire operation. She wasn't a simple mistress who had ruined my marriage out of passion. She was a calculating predator who had identified Marcus and me as her ticket to professional success in Seattle. In an email dated 6 months earlier, Isabella had written to Marcus, "Samantha has built an incredible network in this city. She has direct access to CEOs of Amazon, Microsoft, and at least a dozen startups that are about to become unicorns. If we can transfer even just 40% of her contacts to our agency, we can bill at least $2 million in the first year." Marcus had responded, "The plan is working perfectly. Samantha doesn't suspect anything. She thinks my trips are for real estate. Every time I come home, I tell her elaborate stories about my clients to justify the expensive gifts I buy you. She's so focused on work that she doesn't even notice when I use her same networking strategies to approach her contacts." But the email that hurt me the most was the one where Isabella described how they had used my own loft for their meetings. It's ironic, isn't it? We're planning to destroy her career in the house she pays for, surrounded by her stupid parrots that never stop chattering. At least when it's all over, I won't have to tolerate those noisy birds anymore. My stupid noisy parrots, who were about to become their downfall. I continued reading, discovering increasingly shocking details. Isabella had already rented an office in the South Lake Union neighborhood, just a few blocks from Amazon and Microsoft headquarters. She had registered the company name Thompson Rivera Communications. She had even designed a logo and website. The plan was to announce the launch of the new agency during the annual Seattle Marketing Professionals Association Gala, the most important industry event in our city. Marcus would give a speech about the new era of strategic communication, presenting Isabella as his visionary partner. Together, they would invite all my clients to follow them in their revolutionary adventure. The gala date was in 3 weeks. The date they had planned to destroy my life was in 3 weeks. But they had underestimated 2 things: my determination and my parrot's intelligence. I closed the laptop with trembling hands, not from fear or sadness, but from pure rage. Marcus and Isabella thought they were so smart, so strategic, but they had made the fatal mistake of underestimating their victim. In public relations, I manage corporate crises daily. I know how to transform a scandal into an opportunity, how to flip a negative narrative, how to destroy the reputation of an unfair competitor. And now, for the first time in my career, I would use all these skills for a personal battle. I spent the following days building my revenge plan. I didn't just want to expose Marcus and Isabella. I wanted to annihilate them professionally and personally, so completely that they would never recover. I started photographing and copying everything I had found on Marcus's laptop: emails, documents, photos, business plans, everything. I created a complete dossier of their activities, organized chronologically and by categories. I also discreetly installed monitoring software on Marcus's laptop that allowed me to access all his future communications. Using the information I had gathered, I started monitoring Isabella's movements. I discovered she didn't live in Portland, as Marcus had made me believe, but in an apartment in Bellevue, just 20 minutes from our loft. Marcus's business trips were actually afternoons and evenings spent at Isabella's house, planning my ruin. I discreetly contacted my personal attorney, explaining the situation without revealing how I had obtained the information. Together, we started securing my assets and professional contacts. I had my most important clients sign new exclusive contracts, registered my personal consulting trademark, and began building a legal support network for what would happen. The most delicate part of my plan was making Marcus and Isabella believe their plan was working perfectly. I started behaving like the ignorant and trusting wife they thought I was. When Marcus returned from his trips, I welcomed him with enthusiasm, asked for details about his business, and even encouraged him to expand his contact network. "You know, honey," I told him one evening while we were having dinner, "you should come with me to the Marketing Association Gala. You could meet interesting people for your real estate investments." His eyes lit up. "Really? Do you think it would be appropriate?" "Absolutely," I replied with my most sincere smile. "In fact, why don't you give a speech? You could talk about how the real estate and marketing sectors are evolving together." Marcus accepted immediately, probably thinking I was unconsciously facilitating his sabotage plan. What he didn't know was that I was preparing the stage for his public humiliation. In the 2 weeks before the gala, I perfected every detail of my revenge. I worked with an audio technician to improve the quality of the Parrot recordings, eliminating background noise and isolating Marcus and Isabella's voices. The result was crystal clear. Anyone who heard those recordings would immediately recognize the voices. I also started training Charlie and Lola for the climactic moment. African gray parrots can be trained to respond to specific signals, and I spent hours every day teaching them to repeat the most compromising phrases on my command. The day before the gala, I made a discovery that made my revenge even sweeter. Checking Marcus's emails through the monitoring software, I read a message Isabella had sent him that morning. "Tomorrow is the big day, baby. After tonight, Samantha will be history and we'll be the new kings of Seattle marketing. I've already prepared contracts for clients who will switch to our agency. Conservative estimate, $3.2 million in revenue in the first year, all thanks to stupid Samantha, who served us her career on a silver platter. Marcus had responded. I can't wait to see her face when she realizes what happened. It'll be too late to do anything. And her stupid parrots can chatter all they want in her new single apartment. That evening, while Marcus prepared for what he thought would be his triumph, I made final preparations for what would become his nightmare. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation with all the evidence I had collected. Screenshots of emails, photos of their activities, documents of their business plan, and even some photos of Isabella in our loft that Marcus had taken without my knowledge. But the highlight of the evening would be Charlie and Lola. The Seattle Marketing Professionals Association Gala was held at the luxurious Fairmont Olympic Hotel in the heart of downtown. It was the most prestigious event of the year for anyone working in the communications sector in the Pacific Northwest region. That evening, I dressed to kill. Literally, a black Valentino dress that Marcus had given me for our anniversary. Now I knew he had bought it with money he should have used for our summer vacation. Red Louboutin shoes that gave me 4 inches of height and lethal confidence, and my most beautiful jewelry. Marcus was elegant in his Tom Ford tuxedo, and kept smiling at me with what I now recognized as a false and calculated smile. You're beautiful tonight, he told me as we got in the car. This will be an unforgettable evening. He didn't know how right he was. When we arrived at the Fairmont, I immediately noticed Isabella in the crowd. She was wearing a red dress that made her stand out among the other guests, and when she saw Marcus, her eyes lit up with an intimacy that made me nauseous. But I maintained my professional smile and continued behaving like the ignorant wife. During the cocktail hour, I watched Marcus and Isabella interact. They never got too close, never spoke directly, but there was an electric current between them that was palpable to anyone who knew what to look for. Occasionally, Isabella would glance in my direction, and in those looks, I saw a mixture of contempt and anticipation. She was waiting for the moment when my life would collapse. I spent the first hour of the gala networking, as always, talking with clients and colleagues, but always keeping an eye on Marcus and Isabella. Around 8 o'clock, I saw Marcus approach the event coordinator to confirm his speech. It was time to implement my plan. When the time came for speeches, the room filled with electric energy. Marcus took the stage with that natural confidence that had always fascinated everyone, including me. Microphone in hand, lights illuminating him perfectly. He really looked like the successful man he had always claimed to be. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. He began with his deep, charismatic voice. It's an honor to be here tonight, among the brightest marketing professionals in the Pacific Northwest. The crowd applauded. I smiled and applauded too, but my heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Tonight I want to talk to you about the future of strategic communication. Marcus continued. About how the marketing world is evolving and how we as professionals must adapt to remain relevant. I saw Isabella in the front row, looking at him with adoration. She was probably thinking about how brilliant their plan was, how smart they had been. The future belongs to those who know how to innovate, to those who know how to take calculated risks, to those who know how to. Marcus made a dramatic pause. To those who know how to recognize opportunities when they present themselves. It was my moment. I got up from my table and started walking toward the stage. Marcus saw me and smiled, probably thinking I wanted to congratulate him or add something to his speech. In fact, I said loudly as I approached, my husband knows how to recognize opportunities better than anyone else. The crowd laughed, thinking it was a sweet moment between husband and wife. I'd like to share with you, I continued, taking a microphone from the organization table, a perfect example of how Marcus recognizes opportunities. Marcus's smile began to waver. Isabella, in the front row, looked confused. You see, Marcus recognized the opportunity to build a new marketing agency using the contacts I've built in 15 years of career. The silence in the room became palpable. He recognized the opportunity to plan this new entrepreneurial adventure together with his business and personal partner, Isabella Rivera. I pointed to Isabella, who turned white as a sheet. Marcus gripped the microphone tighter, as if that could save him. "Samantha, what are you doing?" he whispered, but his microphone was still on and everyone heard. "I'm sharing a story of innovation and opportunity," I replied with a radiant smile. "The story of how two people planned to steal my career, my clients, and my life." The crowd began to murmur. I saw some of my most important clients looking at each other with confused expressions. "But the most interesting part of this story," I continued, "is how I discovered it. You see, Marcus and Isabella thought they were very clever. They planned their meetings when I was at work, using our loft as an operational base for their conspiracy. I took out my phone and connected it to the room's audio system. But what they didn't know is that we had witnesses, very special witnesses, who recorded their every word. I pressed play. Marcus's voice, crystal clear and unmistakable, filled the room. "Come, love. My wife isn't here." A deathly silence fell over the crowd. Marcus turned livid. Then Isabella's voice. "How I've missed you, darling." And again, Marcus. "The next trip will be longer, I promise." "These," I announced to the stunned crowd, "are my parrots, Charlie and Lola, African gray parrots who have elephant memories and the habit of repeating everything they hear." Marcus tried to take control. "Samantha, this is ridiculous, But I raised my hand and continued playing. The next recording was even more devastating. It was Isabella's voice saying, "When Samantha discovers that her clients have followed us, it'll be too late to do anything." And Marcus responding, "Her stupid parrots can chatter all they want in her new single apartment." The room exploded in chaos of murmurs and shocked exclamations. But I wasn't finished. I took out my laptop and connected it to the room's projector. "Now, let me share with you the business plan that Marcus and Isabella developed for their new agency, Thompson Rivera Communications." The document I had found on Marcus's laptop appeared on the giant screen. The details of their plan to steal my clients, financial projections based on my contacts, even the list of my clients they had planned to contact. The crowd was in absolute silence. I could see the faces of CEOs of companies I worked with, marketing directors I had known for years, all processing what they were seeing. "And here," I said, clicking to the next slide, "you can see the emails where Isabella describes using my own loft to plan my ruin." On screen appeared the email where Isabella called my parrots stupid and noisy and described how they were destroying Samantha's career in the house she pays for. Marcus attempted one last desperate damage control attempt. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is clearly a setup. My wife is going through a difficult time." But his voice was drowned out by a sound that made only me smile. From my phone, I played a special recording I had prepared. Charlie and Lola repeating, in perfect synchronization, the most compromising phrase I had recorded. "Operation Fresh Start is a success," said Charlie with Marcus's voice. "Samantha suspects nothing," added Lola with Isabella's voice. "Her stupid parrots can't save her," they said together. The silence that followed was so profound you could have heard a pin drop. Then, slowly, applause began. Not for Marcus, but for me. What happened next was more satisfying than I had ever imagined. Marcus tried to leave the stage, but I wasn't finished yet. "Before you go, Marcus," I said, my voice now cold as ice, "there's one last thing the crowd should know." I clicked on the last slide of my presentation. It was a photo of Marcus and Isabella in our bed. A photo Marcus had taken and saved on his laptop with the caption, "New life begins here." The crowd gasped. Some looked away, others shook their heads in disgust. "This photo," I announced, "was taken in the bed I've shared with my husband for 10 years. The same week Marcus gave me a bracelet for our anniversary, telling me how much he loved me." Marcus collapsed. Literally. He sat on the edge of the stage, head in his hands. Isabella tried to escape, but the crowd was so dense she couldn't move. Moreover, several of my clients had recognized her from the photos and were surrounding her, demanding explanations. "Marcus," I said, my voice now amplified throughout the room. "When you come home tonight, if you come home tonight, you'll find your bags already packed. My lawyer will contact you Monday morning to discuss divorce terms." I paused, looking at the crowd of professionals I had known for years. "And as for Thompson Rivera Communications," I continued, "I assure you that no serious client will ever want to associate their brand with people capable of this level of betrayal and manipulation." The applause was deafening. Not only my clients, but the entire crowd of marketing professionals was applauding my revenge. But the sweetest moment came when the association president, Robert Chen, took the stage. "Samantha," he said into the microphone, "on behalf of the entire association, I want to express our solidarity and respect for how you handled this situation. Your professionalism and integrity are an example for all of us." Then he turned to Marcus and Isabella. "As for you two, consider your memberships in this association revoked. We do not tolerate unethical behavior among our members." In the days following the gala, my story became legendary in Seattle's marketing world, not only for the spectacle of the revenge, but for how I had transformed a devastating situation into a professional triumph. My clients not only remained loyal, but began recommending me to others, impressed by my ability to handle a personal crisis with such strategy and class. My revenue increased by 300% in the 3 months that followed. Marcus lost everything. His reputation in the real estate sector was destroyed when the story spread. No wealthy client wanted to be associated with someone capable of betraying his own wife so cruelly. He had to leave Seattle and move to another city to start over from scratch. Isabella had an even worse fate. Not only did she lose the chance to launch her agency, but she was fired from her current position when her boss learned about the story. No respectable company wanted to hire someone with her reputation. But the most satisfying part of the whole story was coming home that night and finding Charlie and Lola waiting for me. "Hello, love," said Charlie when I entered. "You're home," added Lola. For the first time in months, their voices were relaxed and happy. No more fragments of suspicious conversations or mysterious whispers. Just my faithful companions welcoming me home. I opened their cage and let them fly freely through the loft. Charlie perched on my shoulder, Lola on my arm. "Thank you," I whispered to them. "You saved my life." And at that moment, as if they had understood perfectly, they began repeating together a new phrase they had never said before. "Free, free, free." Today, 2 years after that memorable night, I'm living my best life. My consulting agency has become one of the most respected in the Pacific Northwest. I wrote a book on managing personal crises that became a bestseller, and I've even started giving conferences on how to transform betrayals into opportunities. Charlie and Lola are still with me, more talkative than ever. They've learned to say "boss lady" when potential clients enter, and "time to work" when I turn on the computer in the morning. They've become my unofficial assistants and my agency's mascots. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that sometimes protection comes from the most unexpected sources. My parrots weren't just pets. They were my guardians, my private detectives, my feathered saviors. If your partner suddenly starts behaving differently, if your pets seem agitated or start repeating strange things, trust your instinct and trust your animals. They see things that we, blinded by love or trust, can't see. Marcus thought the parrots were stupid and noisy. It turned out they were smarter than him and Isabella put together. And if you're going through a similar situation, remember, revenge served cold isn't just sweeter, it's also more effective. If you liked this story and want to hear other incredible stories of revenge and justice, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. I have many other stories to tell you about how life sometimes gives us exactly what we deserve. And the next time you see a parrot, remember, they might be the best detectives you've ever met. Goodbye from me, Charlie, and Lola. See you in the next video.